philosophy. Secondly, exit from the globalization platform or vector. The Trump has announced its withdrawal from TPP and even threatened to withdraw from the WTO and will negotiate FTA. Last week, the Trump administration decided to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. Thirdly, exit from the globalization vector means refuse to provide the public goods. Anti-globalization isn't Mr. Trump's personal preference, but quite a lot of American preferences. This maybe you can get the result. This Pew's survey result. It indicates most of Americans believe outsourcing and import are biggest harm to American workers. Then what is perspective of globalization? In my view, United States is not willing to undertake the obligation of globalization, but just want to get its benefit. As a result, what Americans want is re-globalization rather than deglobalization. Not long ago, Peterson Institute for International Economics published a study. It included that the payoff to United States from the trade expansion from 1940 to 2016 is about $2.1 trillion. It's very huge. Turning my second issue, the connotation of Belt and Road. Compare the current RTA, OBR or Belt and Road is development-oriented rather than rural-based one. The Belt and Road members are linked by ancient Silk Road. For a long time, ancient Silk Road has been China's commercial tie with the outside world. Now, the Chinese leader hope to revive the concept and connect China with nearby countries, forming a regional economic cooperation mechanism. Second, it will build on the basis of connectivity. For most of the RTA, connectivity is not their precondition, but in the nearby country of Belt and Road, the poor infrastructure is very popular, which constitutes an important bulwark for the global economic growth and cooperation, thereby a huge potential for infrastructure investment in nearby countries. Not long ago, ADB released a report meeting Asia infrastructure needs. The report updates the former estimate by presenting the infrastructure investment needs for developing Asia from 2016 to 2030. The developed Asia will need to invest 26 trillion over the 15 years from 2016 to 2030. Okay, the third one is the Belt and Road governance is multiple cooperation mechanisms adapted to diversity of development parts in Asia. The OBR consists of various cooperation mechanisms. such as FTA, Sub-Regional Economic Cooperation, Economic Corridor, so on. The first, the idea of moral and profit is a basic principle. Last one, it aims to achieve a common community of interest, responsibility, and fit. To sum up, we can define the B&R as following: a new regional economic cooperation mechanism connected by transport road, I mean the Asian Silk Road, based on the connectivity and furthering diversified cooperation and ideal moral and profit for community of shared dynasty. My final issue is B&R rejecting new impetus into the globalization. First one, an open regional lease will promote multilateralism, but the second, connectivity. Connectivity is both the economic growth and the cooperation. That is several evidence. The third, development-oriented regional cooperation as a Belt and Road will be conductive to eliminate the development deficit of current global governance. The fourth, the B&R's public good will contribute to fill up the gap left by US. My conclusion is the Belt and Road will be supplemented rather than substitution of current globalization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will touch upon the multilateral trade cooperation and regional cooperation. So thank you. Then Mr. Chada, please.
Namaste, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. Sugeno Sen, distinguished participants, Excellencies, it is my pleasure and privilege to be here and be speaking on the topic which is globalism at a crossroads, free trade and the rising tide of protectionism. The irony of the day is that while the multilateral rules were commenced starting 1948 with GATT and then to WTO, the US broke the discipline in between by creating a regime called NAFTA and is now all against that has been done. So a lot that has gone on in the last 7 decades, which have already been referred to, is the subject of my discussion today, and the free trade and some opinion from what India should be doing. Growth accelerates is the news that if you see the IMF World Economic Outlook, April 2017, we are all happy that we have accelerated the world economy, that is from 3.1% to 3.5%. Advanced economies have done well, and so have emerging and developing economies. India at 7.2%. Another interesting fact is that the volume of world trade has nearly doubled from last year, which means the trade is working as the growth is happening. It was 2% growth in 2016, and the projection is 3.8, nearly the double. But concurrently, we see the protectionism coming back and showing up in the policies that we are seeing. Not only the protectionism coming in, but the dilution of regional trade agreements in the sense that we saw Brexit happening last year. And the protective or protection increases are in the West are showing up, particularly with the Trump regime that we have seen, and I am not going to speak much on that. I then go to some basic lessons, and I think this is the first year undergraduate economics course that taught us something, which has been referred to in the morning in the first lecture about Adam Smith. And if you see, the 19th century was a European century. We all remember the school textbook by Charles Dickens and what was happening in Europe. So the 19th century belonged to Europe in the sense of growth and development. The 20th century went to the United States, but the 21st century, I won't say, other regions won't do much, they would surely be growing with the way their economies are, but the 21st century, and what should be the next move? This is our century. This is the century that belongs to Asia. And 2 or 3 other points which I thought are important. Late in 18th century, we were taught that absolute advantage works. That is, if one country is efficient, then more efficient than the other country in a particular industry, it will export. But soon, we had the Ricardian theory. David Ricardo in the earlier 19th century said that no. Both a country can be less efficient in both the sectors of production and still trade would pay if the level of less being efficient is not exactly equal. However, being in Japan, I think I'm here in the second time, I would like to pay my tribute to a Japanese economist, which I think who has not been discussed in detail as the first two, Kaname Akamatsu, who wrote in 1930s in Japanese and got translated into English in 1960s. The way he put the theory of comparative advantage was different. He said the investments would move to areas or countries which are labor intensive, and hence from Japan to newly industrialized economies, to ASEAN, to China, and now to India. And now we see even further the global supply chains, which are slicing of so the whole globe, the economy of the world, through trade integration, has gone a long way during the last 7 decades, starting 1948. US protectionism, it was discussed when I was preparing this presentation, that US protectionism, should India worry? In fact, tomorrow I will be presenting, should South Asia worry? I'm talking of India specifically today, that India's exports may lose because we are integrated as far as exports to the US are concerned. But we have reasonably good exports diversification now to East Asian countries, including China and Japan. Then I am told that US trade barriers might give some protective or some gains to India and South Asia through trade diversion. As an economist, as a trade economist, I don't like being benefited from trade diversion because that actually leads to less efficient allocation of resources globally. Then 3 questions that I'm asking, and I'm asking which are hidden and not being discussed much. India and many other developing countries are losing from protectionism. That is actually not seen because when we signed GATT and WTO, we also signed another agreement called General Agreement on Trade in Services, which is lying on the back burner, and trade in services is not being discussed. So there is a hidden protectionism, particularly with Trump telling us that temporary movement, mode 4 of trade in services, that natural persons will not be able to move because of H-1B visa restrictions, but then, hold on, the foreign direct investment will have to move to India to have the ICT professionals working in India rather than in Silicon Valley. The way forward, if we would like to see India participate in global integration, we do understand that India would have to put its own house in order. There are certain points I have given. I am not going to take much of it. That was the purpose of putting this slide on, so that I don't have to speak much. But if you see the last 2 points which I am talking about, 3 points in fact, preferential trade agreements, very careful assessment that India needs to do, which we have lacked. And we are trying our best to, I have been doing some work, others have been doing some work. Facilitate strengthening of Asian integration, RCEP, not going into details because it has been discussed. And finally, what I am worried about is, always worried about are the wars, hopefully not the world wars. I am talking about the trade wars here, and I cherish the global values as much as I cherish the mega trading blocks. And last slide, where I'll show you some misstatement or cheating or whatever you may call it. We were told that it takes 7 years for an average trade agreement, but if you see, the real time was only 3 years. If you count only the duration, and Doha round is already in its teens, nothing has happened there. Along with RCEP, along with TPP, the promise was that we would have the multilateral rules also put in discipline. So the concluding remark is that mega regional trade agreements are important. I'm not speaking on TPP 11, others have spoken, but let us, as a region, go back to Geneva and also strengthen the multilateral rules which facilitate the free trade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cha. Yeah, with your historical view on that. Thank you. Then, Kimura-san, onegaishimasu.
Thank you, Sugen-san. It's a great honor to be here. Anti-globalization is a mixture of various ideas and opinions held by various kinds of people. So it's not a really simplistic problem. But one very dangerous notion, I think, is that some people believe that globalization is necessarily worsen income distribution. I think this notion is very, very dangerous because, say, the link between globalization and income distribution is different country by country, time by time. And that kind of link is typically relatively weak for many situations. So in the case of the US, I think that the most important, most serious income distribution issue is a top 1% issue. Top 1% income is relatively getting bigger and bigger after the 1980s. That happens in the UK too, but actually not happening in Japan and Germany. So if you think of if you think of top 1% income issue, this is not really directly linked to globalization, at least in the sense of a freer trade, freer investment. But actually, Mr. Trump is not interested in top 1% issue at all. So in case of Japan, the most important income distribution issues, to my opinion, intergenerational income distribution. Young people, old people, how to think of a sort of equity between these two. This is a very, very important issue, but this is nothing to do with globalization. So for globalization, what developed countries should do is how to adjust to globalization. When we have a new technology, new technologies coming in, or so globalization proceeds, then business models change. Then certainly we have to change industries, firms, and also what we would do in economic activities. According to that, we have to replace workers from one place to another, and also one worker would do different things in the future.